Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over Winter Storm Uri, which is going to be moving throughout parts of the Northwest, and it's actually currently in the Northwest. It's going to be making its way down through the Rockies, into the southern and central plains, and then back up through the Great Lakes and the Northeast. We also have an ice threat for parts of the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, as well as parts of the Tennessee Valley, and we also have a severe weather threat into parts of the Southeast. We're going to be giving you a detailed breakdown of what to expect, and hopefully by tomorrow we'll have your initial first look at the snowfall forecast for the southern plains, and I'll give you my initial thoughts on what I'm expecting for snowfall in that area. So let's get right into it here, and let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. We have a bunch of warnings and watches and advisories currently ongoing, so let's get right into it. We have some winter storm warnings up in the pink area. That's up for parts of the Rockies and into the Pacific Northwest. We also have some winter weather advisories that stretch from parts of the Northwest through the Rockies and into the central plains there, and that's all the way in the purples. We have some winter storm watches in effect in the blue areas for parts of Colorado, New Mexico, down through Texas, Oklahoma, and even into a little bit of Arkansas, as well as another little batch of winter storm watches for parts of Maryland, Washington, D.C., and then back through northern Virginia, as well as some winter weather advisories through parts of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and even into Mississippi, with some more winter weather advisories back through into the Mid-Atlantic. We also have some avalanche watches in effect for parts of west central Colorado, as well as some freezing fog advisories for eastern New Mexico, and then we have wind chill warnings in effect for much of Montana, the entire state of North Dakota, some parts of South Dakota, and a little bit of northern Minnesota, as well as a huge area of some wind chill advisories in effect for the entire central and northern parts of the plains, and then even up through into the Rockies. We have some more wind chill advisories in that light blue color right there, and we even have a few winter storm warnings through southern and central Virginia. And then your records for yesterday in terms of your high temperatures, your low temperatures. Your high temperature yesterday for the entire continental United States was 9 miles east of Dundee, Florida, which is right in central Florida. They got to 87 degrees yesterday, and again the complete opposite back through northern Minnesota. In Cotton, Minnesota, they got to negative 46 degrees, and that was the lowest observed temperature yesterday in the continental United States. The highest rain report yesterday was in Columbia, Mississippi, which is in south central Mississippi right there. They were under a flash flood warning yesterday for quite a while, and that's because of how much rain they got. They got 3.05 inches of rain, and yesterday the highest snowfall report was 2 miles west-southwest of Oswego, New York. They got 19.6 inches of snowfall, mainly from lake effect that was coming off of Lake Ontario. So let's get right into it here, and let's start off with your European model, and we're going to continue to break this down for you guys. So we have our quick little system that's going to be moving up through the Northeast. That's what's going to bring a little bit of quick snow to parts of the interior Northeast, some freezing rain to the coastal Northeast, and that's going to be moving up through the coast. This is not really the big storm that we're talking about. That's going to be a lighter event, more of a nuisance event compared to what we're dealing with here, and this is going to be your cross-country system right back here. So we're dealing with that snow back through the Northwest, the Rockies, even spreading into the plains. This is what the European model is showing, and we're going to show you a couple different models and compare them with each other just to give you a general idea of what to expect. So we see the polar vortex, which is currently by this point right up here, but it is starting to kind of push its way further to the south and to the east. Now this is going to be very, very important because it's going to create kind of a bowl shape of very cold temperatures, and cold air is also dry air. Warm air is going to be moisture and have a lot more moisture, a lot more water content within the air, and that's going to allow more rain further to the south, more precipitation in those warmer areas, and more cold air and drier air further to the north. So that's what's going to really suppress this system a bit further to the south than a lot of other systems. When you have these temperatures that are going to be in the negative 40s in parts of Minnesota, the Dakotas, back through Montana, and that's going to really have to push its way further to the south. That means that you have a very cold and potent air mass, and with that, nothing can really move throughout that area. You have too dry of air, you have cold air, but it's just going to be way too dry in order to get any sort of precipitation to move through, and the low pressure is going to take the path of least resistance, which in this case is going to be to go down through the Rockies, through the southern plains, and then then back up the East Coast, and the exact track of that is going to make a big difference. So that's going to kind of squeeze it in between parts of the Rockies, the Southern Plains, and then back up through the Tennessee Valley and the Northeast, and that's going to be kind of your bullseye area for some of that some of that snowfall. So this would be by Saturday morning, here to be by Saturday evening. We're now starting to see that system along the East Coast start to really develop. You're getting a little bit of freezing rain and snow in the Great Lakes. We have more of that snow scattered throughout parts of the Rockies. This is going to give some of those higher elevations closer to 4 feet of snowfall in parts of the central and northern Rockies. And that system continues to move further to the south. Your polar vortex by this time is centered right over North Dakota, right around here, and that's squeezing in some of those colder temperatures, creating a bowl of drier, colder air that the system is going to have to go underneath. We have more of this moisture being pulled up from the Gulf of Mexico. We have general troughiness over parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to allow some low pressures to form. So we have more of that snow developing through the central and southern plains, even a bit of freezing rain and just plain rain over some parts of Texas. And then this is going to dip further to the south. Now, we need to really watch this because we have a very prime pattern for some freezing rain if this were to be the setup, if you live right within this area pretty much. This is kind of the setup where if you live within this area, this is how you get the most freezing rain. You have a main area of cold air, your main source of cold air back through the northern plains, but notice this right here. This is a weaker high pressure, but it's enough to bring in some colder air. So you're going to have enough cold air in place, but not too much that this forces this to the south. And you're already having some of these warmer southerly winds coming out of the south. So when you have cold air coming from the north and in the lower latitudes, and actually in the lower parts of the atmosphere, we're dealing with that cold air coming in from the north, but in the upper parts of the atmosphere, you have that warm air coming from the south. When those intersect, you're going to get some freezing rain or sleet, or basically just a mix of all three types of precipitation. So that is going to be where you get that freezing rain, and exactly where that sets up is going to be important. We have your trough, which is right here. This is where your low pressure is by that point, and that's what's bringing all that snow and the rain and the freezing rain to parts of the southern states. So that continues to head further to the east. Notice how far south that snow goes. It goes all the way down to around Houston there, and over some of those areas in southern Texas. So this is going to be definitely a very, very interesting setup. Your trough generally is through the Rockies and then back up through the Central Plains. It's a very amplified trough, and that's because of that polar vortex, and that's what's going to allow the system to bring in so much cold air. You have your polar vortex right there, and it's just being fueled off of that polar vortex, and that polar vortex is what's allowing this to really strengthen and grow. You see that freezing rain right over the area that I highlighted before. Because of that setup, we have a little bit of cold air from this high pressure right here. We have more cold air back through here, so the system is going to have to move up through there, and it's going to mix in with some of those warmer and colder temperatures. That's how you get that freezing rain and snow to set up. So this would be by Monday night into Tuesday morning. The low pressure is now moving further to the north, and we want to watch out for this because there are a couple things that could suppress this further to the south, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. According to the European model, we have some freezing rain back through parts of the Northeast and the Ohio Valley. We'll have to keep an eye on that because that could cause some issues. We have snow back through the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley. We're also going to have to watch that because there will be some issues if that were to happen. And by the way, this is going to be the second or third ice event in just a couple days throughout these areas. You're dealing with more ice throughout those areas, and even through much of the coastal Northeast and the interior Mid-Atlantic. You guys are dealing with a lot of ice over the past few days and upcoming days, because we are dealing with that smaller storm on Sunday that's going to be moving up the coast, and I'll probably make a little post on YouTube about that and kind of give you my forecast on that. But then we're going to see this system roll through, and then we're going to see possibly another storm around the end of the week that could give some more freezing rain. So these areas are really going to be continually hit with wintry types of precipitation, and if you live in the Ohio Valley, this is a very good pattern for you guys because you're going to be on that western edge of these storms. That's where you get the most snow, and if you live in the Ohio Valley and you like snow, that would definitely be a good sign for you guys, because this is the type of pattern that you get a lot of snowfall in. And then that system pulls away to the north. We'll have to again watch that exact track of this system. and then it pulls away again further to the east. Now it's into Nova Scotia by this point. So not really important to look at the exact numbers. These are of course going to change, but it's a good way to gauge where exactly this rolled through. We see those heavier amounts in the purples and the pinks, so you can kind of trace that right here, and this is the general shape you get. So this is what the European model showed, and that's in the black. Now here's what the GFS model showed, and you can see it's actually a little bit further to the south, but the shape of it is fairly similar. There's really not too many differences, and I'm actually quite impressed with what the models are doing. They're really consistent, and they are fairly close to each other. There are a few differences. For example, the Great Lakes aren't seeing as much snowfall on the GFS model. That snow line is pushed further to the south, so we do want to watch this because those areas could get in on a little bit more snowfall. There's a little bit more snowfall through the northern plains, but other than that, there aren't too many changes with that. And if you live right within that black area, that black outlined area, that's where you are dealing with a fairly high likelihood of seeing some decent snowfall out of this. Now, here's what the National Weather Service is showing, and this only goes through Monday morning, so definitely not through the full duration of the event. We are dealing with a lot of these areas in the central and southern plains getting 2 to 5 inches, and even a few pockets of 6+ inches throughout parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, and then back through the northwest and into the Rockies. You guys are also dealing with quite a bit of snowfall, and the storm hasn't wrapped up for any of these areas just yet, so none of these areas have even started to experience the storm by this point. Now, here is the freezing rain for this event, and this could be a fairly big factor. Again, this is only through Monday night, and that's actually only from mainly the Sunday storm and also a little bit of this upcoming storm, but we already have a few amounts over 1/10 of an inch and even a few amounts over 1/4 of an inch if you live throughout parts anywhere from about eastern Texas up through the Tennessee Valley and then back through into the coastal Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. That's where you're dealing with your threat of freezing rain. We see a few amounts closer to 1/4 of an inch of ice, so we do have to watch out for that potential, and that could be a really major threat. Now, here's something that I really want to look at because this is going to be very important as to the track. And this is what the surface map by this point looks like, and here's where your upper air map by the same point looks like. So this is by Monday morning. You just looked at what the surface looks like. Here's what the upper air looks like. We have a little trough right here, and we really need to watch out for this, because if this is a bit stronger, then this whole system is a little bit further to the south, and some of those areas along the coast switch over to snow instead of being in that freezing rain. If this is a little bit weaker, if this doesn't even show up at all, then this is going to go further to the north, and the entire Northeast for the most part is going to be under that rainy area. So we do want to watch out for that. That's something that I did notice when I was doing my analysis of the models this afternoon and when I was preparing to make this video. Now, here's another thing that I noticed, and this is going to be why you're seeing freezing rain. This would be the 96 hour on the European model. This would be Monday night. Now, this is what your surface map looks like. Here's where you're dealing with all of that freezing rain, and I'm going to kind of outline it as closely as I can in the black. So here's where you're dealing with the freezing rain. Now, here's what your upper air temperatures are, and they're 6-8 degrees Celsius above zero. So you have very warm air in the upper parts of the atmosphere, and this is only about 4,000 or 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere. And you're dealing with temperatures fairly high, so you're definitely not seeing snow if this is the case. 4 to 8 degrees Celsius, that's even closer to the teens and 20s when you really want that to be close, or those actually closer to the 40s in some of those areas in Fahrenheit. So when you're looking at this is really warm air in the upper parts of the atmosphere. If you look at the bottom layer of the atmosphere over that same area that's dealing with freezing rain, look at that. It's all in the lower 30s, right around 30 degrees, even into the mid 20s. So you have very, very drastic temperature changes with different levels of the atmosphere, and that's what's going to cause a real big threat in terms of ice, and that's going to be something that we want to watch out for. How warm is that upper layer of the atmosphere, or even the bottom layers of the atmosphere? Because you go only 4,000 or 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere, you're already dealing with maybe closer to a 10-degree temperature change in Fahrenheit. So that's a big deal when you're dealing with freezing rain. If it's warmer in the upper parts of the atmosphere, you can squeeze out more moisture, so we want want to watch out for that. That could be a real big threat with this. That freezing rain threat, probably a lot more dangerous than the snow, because a quarter inch of freezing rain is, I would arguably say, is more dangerous than 6 inches of snow, depending on exactly where that sets up. So if you live anywhere where you're expecting some sort of wintry precipitation, watch out, because this is going to be a very major storm. You will have some fairly gusty winds with this as well. So if you're getting into the snow area, then you might also have to deal with very reduced visibilities, and those could that could also be a real concern with this. With such a strong, powerful low pressure system, that is also always a concern. When you have such a strong low pressure, you always get, most likely, some fairly strong winds. So that is just wrapping it up for today's video. That's kind of what I was noticing when I was looking at the models, and that's just something that I wanted to share with you guys. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.